Hey everyone, this is Moses from Heartblood Cacao. I'm here with Amy Heilman of Lightworker Amy Heilman, based in Minnesota. She's been working with cacao for a while and has been a long-time customer of ours, so I wanted to check in and see what she's up to with cacao. So Amy, the first question that comes to mind for me is, what was your first experience with cacao ceremony?
Hmm. Well, I first came to ceremony as a birth doula. And in that journey, that was probably back in about 2012. And a birth doula is a birthing coach. So I support families emotionally, and I also offer non-medical comfort measures during their birthing time, as well as support during their pregnancy and their postpartum time. And now that I have gotten to know more about ceremony and I practice ceremony much more in my life, I say that childbirth is the greatest ceremony of all. This is coma. And so I was also, when I first started as a birth doula, I was guiding mother blessing ceremonies. So also
Mm-hmm.
familiar with how to hold sacred space and how to facilitate ceremony. And so my path is unique in that way that I was a birth doula first, getting to know sacred ceremony in the birthing space. And then about a year later in 2013, my very first experience with cacao was at the very first Minneapolis yoga conference with a group called the Kula Collective. And I was teaching at a yoga studio, and I was womaning the booth there at the Minneapolis Yoga Conference for this yoga studio. And one of the perks of womaning the booth was that I got to take a yoga session for free. And so I remember looking down at the schedule when it was time to take class, and I saw shamanic yoga with cacao ceremony. And I thought to myself, what is shamanic yoga? And what is cacao ceremony? And for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe the other classes didn't sound quite as interesting, but I ended up in that session, and it was unlike any other yoga class I had ever experienced. And, there was sound healing, live drumming, singing, and we connected with spirit animals, and I felt elevated the whole day. I had no idea what just happened. And so after that was in 2013, a couple of years went by where I was still probably wondering what just happened to me. And I was exploring doing a 200-hour yoga teacher training. And I revisited a couple of other studios that I had known, a couple of other trainings that I had heard of, and then also crossed paths with the Kula Collective again. And they do retreats and trainings all over the world. And I ended up having a Skype session with one of the facilitators, and she was in the jungle in Peru, and I said, thank you so much for having a Skype date with me. And I knew I wanted to do a yoga teacher training that was much more spiritual. And so I ended up doing the training with the Kula Collective in Troncones, Mexico. And it was there where we explored more with other plant medicines, more with cacao, more of this unification of shamanism and yoga that was really resonating with me. And it was at that training that I really felt called and inspired to share the magic of cacao with anybody who's open to it. So yeah, so I really thank very deeply the Kula Collective, and they're still inspiring people all over the world, and it's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love hearing people's first stories because there's always that moment of what is this thing and being
Yeah.
drawn to it and something happening that that brings us back.
Now my musician friend and I, we have a hashtag. It's what the F just happened.
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
it is always, you kind of like leave for a while, this temporary alternate reality, and you come back, and yeah, a lot to process. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what drew you to keep working with cacao? You said you had that calling when you were doing that the intensive in Mexico.
yeah, well, in the intensive, the yoga teacher training, we were doing the deep work that many people do in yoga teacher trainings. And I was really inspired by this infusion of modalities that the Kula Collective so beautifully offers up. This infusion of shamanism and yoga is something that really spoke to me. I had already been practicing yoga for almost a decade, and it had changed my life dramatically. And I have a love affair with yoga already. And so to bring in this element of shamanism that could add a depth that I hadn't experienced before in my yoga practice was really powerful. And then also, not only is the yoga being mixed with plant medicine, cacao, there's also this addition of music and ceremony that adds a lot of sacredness and depth to the experience. And music has been a passion of mine since I was a kid. And what's interesting is that growing up, I was in choir and I played instruments, and I would always put myself in the background out of fear when it came to
Mm-hmm.
singing or dancing or really anything in the creative arts, even though I could feel deep inside that my soul wanted to express itself there. Like there was something really powerful, but there is also a really powerful fear. And so in the yoga teacher training in Troncones, I was being invited, cacao was really inviting me to step into my superpower, which is facilitating sacred space in this very balanced, earthy, embodied, intentional way, and using this infusion of modalities.
Mm.
And this is really fascinating too, because during my childhood, the default path for me was, it was always, I'm going to be an academic professor. And I was really on that track until I was about 27 years old. And I had gone to college. This is the default path for a lot of people. I had gone to college. I had earned a degree in communication studies. I went and earned a master's degree in communication studies. I was teaching in higher education for a while. And it turned out that I was evolving away from academia. And now, instead, I am a professor of the heart. So, it's a different kind of facilitating or teaching that I do. And, right now, really, I'm in this place where there's a lot of parts of my career life merging, or my creative life merging. So it seems to be this like ceremony piece mixed with music, mixed with yoga. And then now I'm bringing in the parent world. So parents who, you probably know this, I think you have a kiddo.
Two of
And
them, yep.
yeah, anybody who has parents, like this ancient wisdom with modern practical tools is something that, in my opinion, not just every person, but specifically parents need so much. And I think it's kind of a niche. Like parents, their schedules are a lot different when they have children, and so the yoga world isn't always as accessible. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm seeing this gap that can be bridged with this beautiful ancient wisdom that cacao ceremony can offer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a theme I see emerge a lot. This how cacao helps us connect with our gifts and have this outlet to share them more fully, more deeply. It's a beautiful part of how that medicine works.
Yeah, it is.
And so I'm curious how you would describe cacao ceremony to someone who's never heard of it before. I'm always thinking about how I talk about it, and I'm always curious how other people describe what is a cacao ceremony.
Yeah, it is a kind of a difficult thing to explain because it changes so much. And
Mm.
cacao is really great at meeting the participants where they are at. So whoever is there, it's kind of like we get to mold and flex the energy in the space. And I love this question because I too am constantly trying to describe what is a cacao ceremony. And, for me, it is this experience in a multi-dimensional, oftentimes a group energy. I mean, people can drink cacao on their own. It's different when there are a group of people coming together intentionally and sharing the space and the energy. And as I said before, it is this sense of entering a temporary alternate reality together, and this portal of healing. And in my experience, people get to feel themselves more deeply than they do in everyday life. And so cacao just has this way, it's an invitation to bring awareness to the subtle, this undercurrent of energy that connects all living things. And this is really the essence of what spirituality is, to go deeper and connect with the subtlety, that subtle space and that deeper part of our consciousness. And for some people that might sound scary and it might sound dark, like there's some darkness there, and it can feel almost womb-like, especially if I'm doing a ceremony at night, which I love. And it's really beautiful, even though it might feel scary at first, or there might be some sort of apprehension. It's really beautiful because cacao is so gentle. That's what makes her unique to other plant medicines, is that she doesn't push anyone through the door. She simply opens the door and allows each person to say yes or no.
Yeah, it's, for me with cacao, there's almost no place that's scary the way it is without cacao, because I'm so held in this loving embrace where cacao is just like, it's okay, that the fear is okay, the anger is okay, the grief, the joy, whatever it is, you can be in it.
Yeah, my friend and musician Kimberly, she says she always calls cacao love in a cup. And I think that's such a great way to put it. And now that I say that out loud to you, I'm thinking about, I was in a doula interview with a couple who they were going to have their first baby, and the dad said to me, I'm just looking for someone who feels like a big hug. And I just, at that point in my life, of course, I'd been working with cacao and just that connection, which is that we are all seeking that love. And love is the greatest medicine of all. Love can cure anything. So
yeah. So what does a cacao ceremony with you look like these days?
A cacao ceremony with me is, every winter I do a winter cacao tour. So I have hired a musician who has now become my friend, because it's almost impossible to be doing this work without deepening my relationship with, the other pros I'm working with. And so we travel around and we collaborate with different yoga studios in the Twin Cities here in Minnesota. And we offer a cacao, it's like a 2.5-hour class that includes cacao ceremony with sound healing and a full shamanic yoga class with sacred drumming, harmonium, rattles, vocals, and more. So that is really inspired by the Kula Collective, and kind of taken in more of like a choreographed musical direction. It's almost a production. So that's really beautiful. And then I've just recently decided to offer up some seasonal cacao ceremonies. Well, I'll be incorporating things that are maybe more accessible for those who are not able or interested in doing a full yoga class. So there will still be some gentle movement and different kinds of movement even. And then I would like to incorporate some more expansive sounds and some more breath work, and just kind of see how cacao will support us with that.
That sounds awesome. Wish I was in Minnesota.
Right? I know, that is the thing. I think in your other interview, the facilitator was saying, yeah, I want to go to my offerings too. And, I think more and more things are emerging. There's a lot of sound healing emerging. There's a lot more ceremony emerging. And one of my unique selling points, I think, is that infusion. Like there's even more potency that happens when I get to infuse all of those things together.
Yeah, I love seeing like all the different ways that people use cacao. I'm always amazed, inspired, and excited by all the different ways that people choose to integrate it into all these different practices. And I always get to hear tons of different ideas that people have on using it, which is fun.
It is so fun.
So I'm curious. You've been using Heartblood's cacao for a while now, and it's always great to hear from our customers why Heartblood. How does that work in your ceremonies?
Mm. Well, I kind of randomly found Heartblood years ago, and then I just haven't stopped because I've tried other kinds of cacao, and as far as just simply the taste goes, I really, really like the taste of Heartblood cacao.
Mm,
I also find that, like most, well, I shouldn't say that. I digress. But Heartblood is socially responsible. And so I really like hearing that Heartblood is in relationship with the growers and the chocolatiers. And there's an attention to detail that I really, really appreciate. And so it feels very thorough as far as like on a practical note, it tastes really good. And then also, socially and politically, I feel like that responsibility is a huge piece for me. So,
mm,
and it's
mm,
nice to, more and more there are different varieties of cacao paste emerging with,
mm-hmm.
all different kinds of things added, herbs, mushrooms, stuff like that. And that's great and fun to explore. And then it's also really nice to have the simplicity of Heartblood's here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of flavors out there too, and I like being able to taste the terroir, like the place where it comes from, because
Mm.
regions are so different. I've tasted cacao from all over the world, and each region has kind of its own flavor profile. If it's processed well, it comes through in different ways. It's pretty neat.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so, what are you excited about coming up in the world of cacao ceremony for yourself? Things you see evolving? Any programs you got coming up?
Yeah, well, I am really excited to start drinking my cacao smoothies now that it's getting warm out. It's been warm or hot cacao, and now that it's getting warmer here in Minnesota, I can start thinking about the smoothies, which is fun. And more specifically, as I said earlier, I'm doing seasonal cacao ceremonies. And especially in Minnesota, it's neat here because we get to experience all 4 seasons in their peak. And so seasons are very significant, especially
Mm-hmm.
here. And so I've been inspired to do seasonal ceremonies, and I've got one coming up in April. It's Saturday, April 6th from 5 to 7, and it's a spring new moon cacao ceremony.
Mm,
So
sounds sweet.
we'll be doing some gentle shamanic yoga. There'll be some sound healing. My musician Kimberly's going to come, and she does such a great job holding space as well for the group. So
Mm.
yeah, I'm really excited about that.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you taking the time.
Yes, thank you for having me. I feel very honored and grateful to be a part of the tribe. Thanks, Moses.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.